Okay. It's a Wednesday, and hold on a second. There we go. It's Wednesday, so welcome into the Galactic Archives. My name is Meshla. For anybody who might be new to the channel, we are in the Galactic Archives. I am primarily a audiobook streamer. What that means in my particular case is that I write and read my own Star Wars fanfiction here on stream. I have been writing Star Wars fanfiction collectively for about 25 years. I started out cooperatively with a group of other writers back in high school, and within the last 10 years or so, I've continued on solo, focusing on the stories for my particular characters. And this evening, we are going to continue our journey into the story called Age of Darkness, which is one of the original stories that I wrote with my group of writers. And it is one of the stories that features my main character, Marin. So we're going to continue this evening with chapter 14. Make sure I have some water before I start reading. Alright. Yes, water is very important, especially when I'm reading. I can get dry pretty fast, so I want to make sure I stay hydrated. And before anybody asks, I have done my eye drops, I have snacks, and my meds are ready to go. I am on the ball this evening, so. Oh, before I get too far into things, I did want to mention that yesterday was my Twitch affiliate 1-year anniversary. I was not able to stream last night due to computer issues that occurred over the weekend and the tail end of last week. So we're streaming today, and we're going to see how it goes. So, yeah, I've officially been a Twitch affiliate for a year. My first official stream on Twitch was February 28th of 2023. I know, it's really, like, mind-blowing when I think about it. It's just, like, I honestly can't really wrap my brain around that fact. So I'm super excited about it. And I'm really glad that everybody's here. And I do hope that you enjoy the stream and the story and the cozy vibes. That's, of course, why we're here. Also, for anybody that is interested... Oh. Really? Oh no! Camera went. Give me a second. As long as you guys can still hear me, I have a backup camera, so give me just a second while I work on that. I had a feeling that was going to happen. Oh dear. Yep, had a feeling. Had a feeling. Yeah, as long as you guys can still hear me, that's fine. I'm just having some camera issues this evening, apparently. So I am trying to address that. So... I think I know what the problem is. So I'm going to stop cameras here. But as long as you guys can still hear me, that's the important part. I'm working on fixing things. Well, or swapping cameras out anyway. Not the most ideal situation for my evening, but that is one of the things that we are testing because I was having some serious issues. So, okay, and it's yelling at me about using... Oh, it actually turned off camo for some reason. I don't know why. Give me a second. Okay. Yeah, it was actually yelling at me about camera hub, and it's actually turned on, so I don't know what's up. Okay. Anyway, we're gonna try that, and if that doesn't work, I do have a backup camera. Yeah, I don't know that suddenly like face planted for whatever reason. But this is my first stream back after dealing with some pretty major tech issues, so things are going to be a little scuffed. So please let me know if you guys are seeing any dropped frames, any camera issues, any lag, anything like that. Please and thank you. I would appreciate it. I don't have a command for lag, but definitely let me know there in chat. Because I do have a camera that I can swap to if I need. Okay. I'm just readjusting. I'm ready. Probably gonna have some audio level issues because, like I said, I was having some computer problems. So just let me know in the chat. And what I was going to say before camera issues so really interrupted me was that I do use closed captioning. So if you're listening, but have the sound off, maybe you're at work or something, I do have the closed captions on. So I hopefully those will help. Oh, good. Thanks. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Oh goodness, sorry. I'm trying to not actually mute my mic because it messes with the closed captioning actually. All right. Sorry. Needed a bit of a snack there. Okay. All right. And trying to not have the music blow anybody's eardrums, especially my own. So let me know if you guys can hear it. Trying to not drown out myself. So that would be appreciated. Yes, snacks are very important. All right. Turn that down just a little. All right. Age of Darkness, Chapter 14. Catan, a grotto not far from the Card estate. Zan stepped forward from where he and Callista had been hanging back just outside the circle. He stood now in the center, nodded to Stefan, and took a deep breath. "Members of the Council," he said, his voice already tinged with the power of the Force as he drew on the energy of those around him. "Open your minds, and I will share with you my nightmare." Mikron reached out a hand and focused on Zan. Callista had told him of the technique the Mandalorian was now trying to use, and the rogue was about to lend him a hand. Zan used the strength of those around him to power his vision, perception, and ability to project the vision into the minds of the gathered masters. Mikron Din, for the first time since the battle with his clone nearly 3 years ago, fell entirely into the chaotic beauty of the Force. The conduit opened the floodgates and directed the tsunami into the waiting arms of Zan Canadius. The surge of energy nearly staggered Zan, but the Mandalorian took it and used it to fuel his urgency and vision. Mikron, meanwhile, shielded himself and Ari from having to bear witness to his nightmare once more. When it was finally over, one could have heard the heartbeat of a flitnat from 20 meters away. That that was terrible. Master Jin had a hand on her forehead and her eyes shut tight. An understatement, to be sure. Stefan spoke once more. Thank you, Zan. The Mandalorian looked slightly drained, but nodded, bowed, and resumed his place outside the circle with Callista. It is a terrible vision, Stefan continued. The question, though, is what do we do now? A potent question at that, Streen finally spoke. Haggard and worn, the oldest living member of the council leaned heavily on what appeared to be a gaffi stick. This vision, while granting us a keener sense of urgency, does little to point us in any direction, right or wrong. Indeed, another master added. With so many threats out there, how do we decide which to focus our efforts on? I've never been the biggest team player, Micron said, but I don't know if splitting our attention is the best idea at the moment either. Well, we need to do something, Christian said emphatically, and soon. That much we can all agree on, Stefan nodded. With that in mind, I'm making the following suggestions and urging the council to back the strategy until a better one can take its place. There were nods of agreement, and the rogue winked at the black-haired Jedi. First, Card began, the Masters Din have volunteered to return to Coruscant to root out whatever deception our New Republic counterparts have been playing at. Secondly, I am suggesting that the Masters Canadius be sent into Hutt space to determine what involvement the Hutts could have on the larger picture. Their contacts and intelligence expertise would be well suited to enter the Hutt's domain. I also request that they be given all support available to assist them in their mission. As to the Empire, I might be useful there. Despite having led this fine host numerous times, I am still fairly unknown in most Imperial circles. We will need to borrow a few Imperial starships, but I believe it is possible to insert a small team of Jedi into Imperial space. We need to gather all the information we can on their movements. Finally, I hesitate to suggest anyone go near these force wounds. We've already lost too many and need an explanation for how or why they keep disappearing. In investigating these other issues, I am hopeful that we can uncover a connection to the last. Someone, somewhere, must know what is happening. We only need to ask. We'll be heading back to Coruscant in 24 standard hours, Ari said from her place next to Mick. We'll get to the bottom of the New Republic's apparent lapse in ethics. I can get to Maxwell easily enough. If all else fails, I can always have the rogue ask hard. Micron cast the group a trademark grin, though he supposed it was probably lost on the majority of them. Good, Christiane said. I suppose the task will be dividing our resources between the 3 missions. I assume that sending the Dins to Coruscant solo would be safe? Aye, Ari answered for both of them. We don't expect to run into trouble at home, though, if we do, we know how to get in touch. Then it would seem, Streen spoke up once more, that we merely need to divide our attention between the Masters Canadius and Card. If the other Masters agree, I believe the expression is, we are at your disposal. Unanimously, the council agreed, and they laid initial plans to get things moving. It felt good to the rogue to have a mission again, even if it was snooping around back home. Having an objective put his mind at ease. The military man in him never could stand having nothing to do. The meeting adjourned soon after, with all involved heading their separate ways. Ari and Mick said their goodnights and retreated to the guest house to enjoy one last quiet evening. It was late on Catan, and the new day would be coming soon. With it, Micron feared, followed doom. The rogue gazed at the stars as he and his princess wound their way back along the forest path. I'm still here, he thought, to no one in particular. Give me your best shot. Zan, Stefan started to say as several of the masters began to disperse. Can you stay with us a moment? Zan raised an eyebrow but nodded. Just me, or do you want Callista as well? He looked at his wife and mentally prodded her. Do you know what this is about? As they approached the fire in the center. Callista frowned, glanced at Christiane momentarily before looking at Stefan, but neither council member betrayed much of anything. She shrugged and shook her head, settling on one of the boulders surrounding the fire pit from a few meters back. I have no idea, Sierra, she said. First things first, he said to both of them as he sat back down. Chris and I both want to apologize for you two being out of the loop on what we've been doing as a council, especially with you doing so much on Coruscant. It's fine, Master, Zan said, staying formal. I'm as much to blame for not contacting the council often either, workload notwithstanding. Well, you've pulled the workload that one of us would, Christiane told him, perhaps even more. We were talking after yesterday's meeting and want to ask if it would solve the communication problem by being on the council. That got Callista's attention, and she shared a look with Stefan for a moment, her eyes wide. He nodded softly and leaned back against the rock behind him. Zan scowled. Permission to speak freely? He said, softly while inwardly cringing. By all means, Stefan said, throwing another piece of wood on the fire. Zan sighed and growled softly. Are you out of your criffing minds? Sure, it may solve communication issues, but you know as well as I do that I'm no diplomat. He was scowling heavily at Stefan. And, as was common, his next question carried his typical Mandalorian bluntness. Why? Well, a thought came to my mind last night, Stefan said. I don't pretend to understand how the Force works with things like this, Zan. But this council is not just for diplomats. I'm sure not considered one. Callista couldn't hide a smile that touched her lips at Stefan's last comment. She'd always considered him a diplomat, but in more recent years he'd become more of a warrior in his focus. In frustration, Zan ran a hand through his hair and gazed at the fire. You are a better one than I, Stefan. Look at what happened on the landing pad, for Force's sake. My attempt to bring Mick and Ari back into the Order nearly became a war all on its own. He sighed and stood up to pace, showing how uncomfortable he actually was. What could I possibly bring to the council besides a new punching bag for my in-laws? Christiane snickered, and Stefan tried to hide a smile. Zan, this isn't an appointment. Trust me, it was only an idea. No feelings would be hurt if you feel you're better suited elsewhere. And as far as being hot-headed, I'm sure this council, in its history, has had plenty of them. Callista grinned and shared a look with Christiane for a moment. She understood Zan's frustration and confusion well. After a moment, she stood and laid a hand on her husband's shoulder. Sierra, isn't it better to be here where you can share directly? Hearing things secondhand can skew how people view a situation. I know you. You much prefer to take things head-on. That may be true, Sierra, but... He looked at Stefan again. An idea? He shook his head firmly. Surely there has to be more behind this idea than me bellowing and running into you lot like a blind sand panther on a bantha hunt? Stefan maintained his look of innocence. A thought that struck me last night. Nothing more. I've not been scheming like a hut over the idea, if that's what you're wondering. Zan laughed. Ossic, Stefan. You don't do things in half measures. I know you as well as you know me. You have to have some idea. Stefan looked to Christiane and then Callista. Okay, I was trying to make it sound innocent. The fact is, it was something I had been sensing in meditation lately. Maybe we needed another voice other than Mick's, laced with the same hard-headedness and an outside opinion on matters. Having you be that voice was my first thought. Callista grinned. He may be hard-headed, but I think it's needed. How else could we have gotten your attention so effectively? Stefan answered just by motioning to her to emphasize his point. Zan smirked. I can provide you with that, but not everyone on the council is as... He fumbled for the right word. Patient with such lines of thought. It was Chris's turn to grin. I think it's a change we can make, Zan. Force knows we could probably use it. Stefan looked at Chris knowingly before looking back to Zan. As I said, it's not an appointment. You can turn it down if you feel you need to. And we don't need your answer now, so you can think about it. Bah, he growled. Trust you two to get my shields to drop and then drop a torpedo on me. He sighed again. You know, if it weren't for this vision, I would have told you to stuff it. He turned his back to Christiane and Stefan, looking at his wife. You know this means changes for us both, right? She nodded. I think this is one for the better, though. He shook his head again. I can just see Mick's reaction. Remind me to keep a permanent stock of narcoleth handy. He smirked at his wife before turning back to face the other masters. Fine. Your pet Mando has been brought to heel, he said, his face neutral. I accept. Stefan looked to Christiane with a smile and stood up to move to Zan. It could have been worse, Zan. Remember that. I could have used Blue Talon's main cannon instead of a torpedo. That got a laugh out of Chris. Callista couldn't help it. She giggled. Don't even threaten that, Stefan. That's awful, she told him, between fits of giggles. Zan glowered. You mean I had the option? He then sighed. Well, now, I suppose we should discuss some plans. Stefan merely shrugged. It would have meant the same ending. We have an ad starting in 4.5 minutes. I do try to not read during the ads. They are 1.5 minutes long. And it's a great time to go get a snack, a drink of water, have a stretch. Hey, Aja, welcome in. Actually gonna pause and get some water here. Thank you for that lurk. I appreciate you. Sorry. Chapter 15. Catan, the mountains surrounding the Card estate. The crisp morning air was tinged with the heavy scent of pine and freshly fallen snow. Micron did stood upon an open ledge about midway up the mountain behind the Card's estate. The peaks of the range shone ever white and crisp in the early morning light against a clear blue sky. At this elevation, summer would never truly arrive. The ledge upon which the rogue stood was expansive, large enough to land a space cruiser, in fact, and quite obviously artificial. The stone was smooth and flat, and Mick could make out the barest traces of long-gone structures in the rock. The rogue imagined some ancient castle may have sat upon this very ledge overlooking the valley below. The sun had just crested the eastern horizon, and its warming rays had not yet reached their lofty height. There was a bite to the air, and a thin line of frost on the rock face just 10 meters up from his ledge. Micron stood at the edge, the wall of the mountain 100 meters behind him, with his eyes closed and breathing deep in the morning air. He allowed himself to fall into the river of the Force and let its current flow freely through him. In its chaos he found solace, yet he could feel the tremendous wounds when he allowed his senses to extend outward. The Force itself cried out in pain and anguish, as an animal would if whole pieces of flesh were removed from its body. The conduit could feel the jagged edges of each hole as though they were wounds in his own body, and the pain nearly caused him to stumble. There was a hand on his shoulder, pulling him back from the ledge. Mick! Ari cried in shock. What are you doing? Sorry. Mick! Kelly cried in shock. What are you doing? Micron quickly came back to himself and looked at the ledge before smiling over at Callista. I'm just getting lost in my thoughts, the rogue smiled. And testing your reflexes. Oop, there's the camera. Had a feeling. Had a feeling. Had a feeling. Give me 1 second while I swap some stuff around. Okay. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, this camera is being very weird right now. Oh, goodness. Yep, sorry guys, I'm gonna have to fix some stuff on the fly here. Okay. Oh, goodness. But I knew it was gonna be a little scuffed. Okay. I am testing a whole bunch of things, so I'm not surprised. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I kinda knew it was gonna be a little scuffed, but we're working with what we got. Okay. I'm swapping cameras. I will be right back, guys. Give me a second. Alright, guys. I am actually going to need to restart stream in order to do this. So I will be back as soon as possible. I do apologize. Kind of had a feeling that was going to be the case. So I will be back as soon as I can. So sorry.